Views expressed by CamaPlan podcast guests may not reflect those of CamaPlan. CamaPlan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. CamaPlan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Welcome back to the road to financial freedom, where experts share stories and secrets to unlocking financial independence. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator focused in educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. I'm Ricky Trong, CamaPlan team member and podcast host. In each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each of our guests. Today's guest started as an undergrad in business school in Canada, graduated from graduate school in business and law in Australia, was an executive for Nestle in Switzerland and Africa for 7 years, but now is a full-time investor and traveler with a focus on emerging frontier markets. Part-time blogger and YouTuber on the side. Please welcome Ladislas Maurice. Hey, Ladislas, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Ricky?
Doing well. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you here today. So let's just jump right into it. Tell me a little bit we've already heard a little bit about your background, but give me some more information. Let's hear about your background and how you became, this full-time investor in real estate. And I know you do some international travel as well. So tell me about that. I'm excited.
Sure. So my last role in corporate, so when I had a job, was when I worked for Nestle in Ghana. So in West Africa, I was on the executive board of Nestle Ghana, in charge of the milk business for a few West African countries. So I did that for a number of years. And at the sweet age of 30, I decided that, hey, my 20s were great. I worked for that one company. I traveled all over Africa. I lived there for 7 years. And for my 30s, I want to do something different. But first, I want a bit of a break. So I left and I went on a road trip from Oman, which is near Dubai, to Paris by car. So I drove to Dubai, then all across Iran, Armenia, Georgia, all of Turkey, then into Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and then from there on to Paris. So it was really an eye-opening road trip in the sense that not just because of the history and the cultures, et cetera, but because after having spent so many years working in corporate, I realized the opportunity cost of having a full-time job. And the opportunity cost of having a full-time job is that you do not have enough time to dedicate to manage your own money and to opportunities on the side. Because when I was traveling, I would take my time. I'd arrive in a city, for example, in Armenia or in Georgia. I would go meet with some lawyers, try to understand immigration, because a lot of these countries have very low taxes. I'd go speak to some real estate agencies. I would meet up with other expats who are doing business there, some locals, et cetera. And then I would see business opportunities, investment opportunities that I otherwise would not see because I'd be busy 60 to 70 hours a week dealing with my PowerPoints and my month-end closings. So I started doing gradually some flips. So I bought some apartments, did some quick little freshen up renovations in some of these countries and then flipped them. And then this started working. And my plan initially was to go get a job in Dubai because I wanted to spend a bit of time in the Middle East. And I never quite got to it because each time there was another exciting project going on. So now I've been doing this for 6 years. I travel really around the world. I've done real estate deals in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Europe, the Balkans, the Middle East, Africa, the US as well, though I'm not active in that market anymore. And now I'm looking increasingly at Latin America as well.
Wow, that's so cool. What a road trip too. I mean, I've been to the Middle East once and I can just say like I didn't get to travel too far around there, but it was an incredible experience not just the history, but I mean just the landscapes, everything. It's so beautiful out there. And oh my gosh, like you're living my dream, honestly. Like I want to be that world traveler. So I aspire to be that. Oh my God. I have to take some of your, some of the things that you've done and I'm going to have to apply that to my own life.
And it's a lot, yeah. It's a lot of fun. And my model is I do like slow traveling essentially. So my model is I also have a map of the world in my head and I look at macro a lot. And when I see that there's a country that has positive catalysts, positive developments, that has something going on from a macro point of view, I then just go there for a few weeks, sometimes a few months, and I spend time on the ground. I try to meet as many people as I can. I do my own due diligence. Because in a lot of these countries, what's important to understand, for example, I went to Uzbekistan 3 years ago because there were a lot of good things happening in Uzbekistan, a lot of reforms, etc. So Uzbekistan is in Central Asia between Kazakhstan and Afghanistan. I know it sounds bad, but it's actually really exciting from an investment point of view. And there's no data. There's very little data. Like you can see you see some news, some laws that are passed. You can see some data from the World Bank, et cetera. But in terms of how to invest in these countries, there's nothing. There's very little data. There's nothing. So you need to go there to get the insight to see how do you play it. So I went there hoping, or rather with the idea that I would want to buy prime real estate in the capital, Tashkent, because you could get prime real estate for about $1,000 to $1,200 a square meter. I know your audience is American, but if you go overseas, you need to learn square meters. So it's cheap for a booming capital city. It's incredibly cheap, and buying real estate there was not impossible, but it was very gray from a legal point of view. You needed to create a local company. Technically, you weren't really allowed to rent it out, etc. But with a bunch of side contracts, it was fine. So it was very gray. And then I looked at the local stock market. So yes, there's a stock market in Uzbekistan, and I saw incredible companies. It was all the information was either in Uzbek or in Russian or both. And some of these companies had P ratios of 3, no debt on their balance sheets. They were spitting out dividend yields of 15, 20% a year, and they were growing like 40, wow. 50, 60% a year.
Wow. Crazy.
Incredible numbers. I mean, the risk with investing in such places that you don't really know how well the audits are done. There's a lot of corruption, so you never really know. But I bought a whole bunch of stocks of various companies on the local stock market instead of buying real estate. So essentially I went to Uzbekistan hoping to buy real estate. I came back with a local brokerage account and it's done very well. I haven't sold anything. I'm up 3x since I bought, and they're still paying me dividends now on current valuations of probably 10%. And they're showing great growth numbers, like 15, 20%. Things have slowed down a little bit, but it's still very good.
And how long have you been invested out there?
About 3 years now.
Okay. Wow.
So that's my model, Recently also went to Serbia. A lot of things I like about Serbia, a bit of a neutral foreign policy between East and West, a lot of free trade agreements with Russia, with Turkey, with the European Union. So, you want to be neutral these days because if you play your cards right, you can benefit from all sides if you play your cards right, which is hard, but historically, Serbia has done that for quite a while. I went there and I just couldn't find a way to play because the local stock market, nothing's happening. It's not that cheap either. Local real estate is just too expensive. Sometimes there are markets you just can't really play. So that's my model essentially.
I love that. So take me through if you were to invest into an emerging market, because I know you make sure to look out for emerging and frontier type markets, right? So what is something that you look for that really gives you the green light of, oh, this is going to definitely be up and coming. I should get in on the ground floor.
So I'll look at macro. I look a lot at reforms, political reforms, and then money flows.
Okay.
So, where's the money going to come from? Is it internally because, things are happening? They're expanding mining or whatever, or there's a lot of GDP growth. They have a lot of plans going forward. Or is it there's just a lot of foreign direct investment coming there? I look at other metrics such as, debt to GDP ratios, because if they're high, then they're likely to raise taxes. Just look at a number of factors. There's no single factor that's, that'll make me go there, but it's just, what's the growth story? Is there a growth story? What's the growth story? And sometimes growth stories are entirely regional within a country, not necessarily the country as a whole.
Wow, really? That's interesting. And I know you're a YouTuber, as we've mentioned earlier, and I've seen some of your YouTubes. And if you haven't seen them yet, you should really check them out, because he goes into depth, when he's making a deal and things like that. He shows you the step-by-step process that he's taking, and making sure all his due diligence. I think that's so interesting about you, actually. And I know that you do a lot with answering questions about secondary residencies and things like that. Could you go into some depth about that?
Sure. So it's actually one of the, because I have American clients and they often ask me, where can I get leverage? I want to buy in this emerging market. How do I get leverage? How can I get a mortgage? The reality is that most, actually, if not all, but the vast majority of emerging and frontier markets are cash markets. So as a non-resident, as a non-citizen, you do not have access to mortgages, and often locals don't either. So it's entirely cash. So in terms of, then a lot of Americans are like, oh, but I can make more money because I just put a 10% down payment, blah, blah, in the US. And I go, sure. Obviously that's better. But what you get when you invest in these emerging markets is diversification. So something completely different that you don't have right now in your portfolio. Buying another unit in Tampa, that doesn't do much for your diversification, rather than buying real estate in Turkey or real estate in Mexico or wherever. Because in a lot of these countries, especially in an environment where interest rates are going up, right? So everyone right now in North America and in Western Europe is talking about rising interest rates, and the impact on the housing market. Guess what? Where I'm invested in these emergent markets, it has absolutely zero impact, because people buy cash. So in many ways, from a central bank point of view, there's less downside in a lot of these emerging markets from a monetary policy point of view. So in the markets where I invest, I'm not dependent on interest rates. So just that in itself is interesting diversification. And then what a lot of these countries offer, some, not all, is if you buy real estate in their country, then sometimes they even offer you residency rights. So this means that for example, buying real estate in Montenegro, which is a beautiful little country of 600,000 people just south of Croatia, and low tax, you can then get residency rights for yourself, your spouse, and your underage children.
Oh, wow.
So at any given point, you can just move to Montenegro and live on the Mediterranean. The cost of living is very low, taxes are low, and you can just, enjoy your real estate and just enjoy life and have beautiful, delicious, $1 coffees on terraces. Wow. looking at the Adriatic and looking at all these Europeans who don't work much. So, so that's a benefit. In Turkey, for example, so sure, the economy has a lot of issues right now. Inflation is around 80% officially. In reality, it's potentially more. But you can get real estate in the center of Istanbul, so a city of like 15 million people that's been around for thousands of years. And you can get that, you can get prime real estate there for less than $2,000 a square meter, like fully renovated. And if you buy for $400,000 of real estate in Turkey, anywhere in Turkey, so it can be 1 apartment, 2 apartments, 3 apartments, as many as you want, but it just needs to total at least $400,000, then you get citizenship for yourself, your spouse, and your children. So you don't even need to set foot in Turkey. You can buy real estate remotely that is affordable, though it comes with a bunch of political and economic risk, but you can get some, prime real estate in a huge city and then get citizenship for your family. And then what this means as well is for your descendants. So if you're of the opinion, right? If you're the opinion that the power, the center of the world is gradually shifting from the North Atlantic, from the Western world to the East, then why not buy yourself a call option on access to all of these markets, not just for yourself, but for your descendants? So, maybe the West right now, maybe we're number 1 in the world, but maybe in 3 generations, maybe we won't be anymore. I don't know. Like, things change a lot, empires come and go. And right now, there's essentially that very affordable call option on giving all of your descendants that option to hedge from a political and geopolitical point of view.
That's so interesting. I had no idea. Like, I know when you can get residency in certain places. I mean, is that specific to there with the Turkey, descendants?
Yeah, Turkey is citizenship. So it's not like residency is the right to live.
Right.
And citizenship is you become a citizen, you get a naturalization document, and you have a passport. You are then a Turkish citizen.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. I mean, I don't know if all of our listeners really know the difference between that. As you saw, I didn't, obviously. So I appreciate that explanation. That's really interesting. And is there any other countries in the world that offer that same type of citizenship from just purchasing land?
Yes, in the Caribbean, but typically it's overpriced because they force you to buy within some specific developments. What's interesting about Turkey is that you can buy anywhere in the open market. So you buy like the locals. So when you're buying, you're not overpaying. Essentially, you get citizenship for free. So you're buying good value real estate and then you get citizenship for free. A lot of countries offer residency. So when you buy real estate, so Mexico and Colombia, et cetera, but you need to invest above a certain threshold. A lot of countries in Europe as well, even Hungary, et cetera, there are ways to structure your real estate purchase so that you can get citizenship.
Oh, wow.
And people have to ask themselves, what kind of country do they want to live in? And this goes for Americans of all backgrounds. Some people don't agree with the recent Supreme Court decisions. Well, guess what? They can probably move to Portugal and they'll be happy there. Other people are more conservative and they want to live in more conservative countries. They can move to the Balkans. They can move to Hungary. So there's a country for everyone out there. And if you look around enough, you can generally find a country that will be welcoming of you and your own lifestyle and your own views. And in many cases, countries that have attractive tax systems. So for US people, it's a little complicated because you get taxed on wherever you live, the US taxes you. But still, it's usually possible to reduce your overall tax base as you move overseas.
Wow. Thanks for, going into that. Because I know like on your website, The Wandering Investor, you do go into these kinds of things along with international tax strategies. Can you tell me a little bit about how that works? Like from a US point of view, how a tax strategy would look out somewhere that you've invested in?
Look, I offer these services, helping people connect with the right experts. For, non-US people, the US is a complete. It's a can of worms. The IRS it's terrible. But if people want to move overseas, I work with a specialist. I can refer them to him. So if you want to move overseas, shift your life offshore, reduce your taxes, etc. He offers services. So for 6 months of like complete hand-holding, he'll help you choose the country, actually move there, structure all of your taxes properly, reduce your taxes, restructure your business so that you can, benefit from new tax structures, etc. So he takes care of that from A to Z, and he's there with you for 6 months throughout the whole process.
That's a great resource. Thank you so much. And we have access to that through your website if they wanted to get in touch with this person, correct?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. If you're not an expert, if you're not licensed, you don't want to open that can of worms. And I totally get that. No worries. But thank you. So what else? Like, tell me about an investment that you're really proud of, that you have succeeded. Maybe you don't own it anymore, but is there an investment that you've done overseas that you love, you always like to talk about, you brag about it, anything like that?
Yeah. So I talked about Uzbekistan, which is a good one. Look, I also invest in stocks, and I don't just do emerging market real estate. I also invest in, like I said, I invested in the US before. I invest in stocks. I do some venture capital. So I'm across geographies and across asset classes. But something that real estate that I really enjoy. Would I say it's the best returns? No, but it's just whenever I go there, I'm happy. It's Budapest. Absolutely gorgeous city in the center of Europe. Prices are relatively affordable. Budapest is more affordable than most European capitals because it uses its own currency, which is not very strong, the Hungarian forints. And whenever the world is a bit shaky, the currency goes down. So what happens is that you have real estate in an amazing city, which is perpetually undervalued compared to its European peers because of the currency. But you get some fairly decent yields because you can set the rents not in the local currency, but in euros and even sometimes in dollars, because most people renting real core downtown real estate in Budapest are foreigners. So from a cash flow point of view, it's interesting. And just from a pure pleasure point of view, owning real estate in such historical buildings that have been around for over 100 years, that are absolutely gorgeous inside and out, and where you can come up with these beautiful renovations inside, is a real pleasure. So I have some real estate in Budapest. It's part of my kind of core portfolio. I don't sell. I'm just very happy to own it, and it brings me a lot of pleasure.
There you go. I mean, that's a great bragging point. You want things that bring you pleasure in life and make you happy. So yeah, that's a great one. I love it.
And it's something that's quite rare for that American investors need to understand when investing in some older markets, such as in Europe. In America, housing is in most cases very disposable, and that's a mistake that a lot of Europeans make when they invest in the US. They come to the US, they're like, oh wow, this house is cheap. They buy it, and then they don't quite understand that a house that is 35 years old in some suburb in the US is considered old. For Europeans, it's still relatively new. So and you guys in the US, you actually depreciate real estate in your taxes, because you run with the assumption that it's becoming older and less good. In Europe, we don't necessarily do this. So when you buy historical real estate in for example, in Paris or in Budapest, I find Budapest a lot more interesting, a lot more affordable. The architectural value of the real estate you buy actually goes up with time.
Oh, wow.
So sure, inside of the apartment, the renovation, the design, etc., that depreciates, and every 15 years you'll need to, freshen it up or something. But the actual building, the structure requires maintenance, but the architectural value just goes up, keeps going up.
Did they put kind of like in the US in historical landmarks, things like that, they're covered with certain laws that you can't make changes. Is that the same thing across the board?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Interesting.
So you get to own a piece of history. And that, for example, for American investors, being able to go to Europe, go to a beautiful city that, will always have a lot of tourism. If right now it's Americans that have money, Americans will be there. If later on it's Asians that have money, Asians will go there. And you get to own that piece of history. And this is very different from, the typical suburban house you might own in Austin.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can understand that. I mean, of course, the US is so new compared to European countries. I mean, we have history, but nothing that can compete with the history out there. So,
and at the end of the day, investing overseas, it's about being reasonable and taking your first steps, even when it comes to opening a bank account overseas or getting a residency. No one's saying, I'm not going around telling people, get your money out of the US. There are a lot of these people, you hear them on podcasts, on YouTube. They're like, it's the end of the dollar and the United States is going to crash and burn and this and that. Like,
dramatic. That's so dramatic.
It's like, first step is, just get a bit of diversification, get yourself a nice apartment somewhere in a beautiful city in Europe. Or, if you like Latin American vibes, go buy something in Mexico or Medellin or in Brazil, just, step by step. You'll need to sell everything and, move over, send all your money overseas. Don't do that. Actually, don't do that. Just a bit of diversification is healthy. That's all I'm saying.
Nice. What about how hard is it for someone to open a bank account overseas? I know that I'm sure you have experience with that. You've probably opened it in multiple different countries that you've invested in. Is that a difficult process?
Yes and no. Depends on a lot of factors. So Generally, if you own real estate in a country, they will allow you to open a bank account there. Two, the list of countries where it's possible and banks to open accounts overseas without being a resident is going down every year, especially for Americans, because Americans have special rules called FATCA, which means that a lot of banks overseas specifically do not want to deal with US citizens because of all the compliance that was imposed on them by the United States. Like specific compliance that every bank in the world needs to follow for every US client that they have. So a lot of banks were just saying, Americans not worth their trouble. So for Americans, it's tough, but there are options out there. Typically, the more money you have, the easier it is. If you have $10,000 and you're hoping to open a bank account overseas, it's possible. But there are very few options out there. I'm not even sure it's worth your time. If you have, at least $50,000, $100,000 to deposit, there are more options. If you have at least 500 or $1 million, then there are many more options.
Interesting. Okay. Because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Some of them can be opened entirely remotely.
Okay.
Which is good. Others, you need to go there yourself. But if you need to open remotely, expect a lot of paperwork and compliance and sending apostilles and certified copies of this and that. It's a process. It's not just like going to your local bank and saying, hey, give me an account. Half an hour later, you're out with like a debit card and like 3 accounts.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like you kind of want those restrictions on it too, to just make sure that your money's safe there as well, So, I mean, I understand the paperwork is sometimes necessary in these kinds of situations, but if you want to do it the legal way, that would be the way to do it. Because, you always hear about people like offshore accounts and it sounds, not too savory, I would say.
Like generally speaking, look, I've had people ask me before, oh, I've got this money, I'm trying to hide it. It's just, it doesn't quite work anymore. There's just too much information sharing. And even if you get away with hiding money now, chances are that with AI and even more information sharing down the line, that you'll get caught in 5 years for what you're doing now. So it's just not worth it. Either you pay your taxes or you move overseas, you legally reduce your taxes. And if you really don't want to pay any taxes to the IRS, you can renounce U.S. citizenship and obtain, a few other citizenships, and then you're free of the grips of the IRS. So there are a lot of options out there. But people just they can't have, get all the benefits of being a U.S. person and living in the U.S. and having access to that great labor market, and then, trying to not pay their taxes through offshore bank accounts. It's just, it just in the 80s, yes, but those days are over.
Yeah. No, thank you for, bringing light onto that. And is this something that you talk about? Do you offer courses and things like that through your website, or you just work with clients specifically?
Yeah, I work with clients, and then I offer the list of my contacts on my website. So as I travel around, I've developed a very good network of people. Mm. And so if you're looking for a good real estate agent in Colombia or in Turkey or in Hungary or in Montenegro, et cetera, there's all that information. And then typically as well, real estate lawyers in these countries as well.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great that you have all those resources, and they're all available on your website, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what have you learned over your years of investing that you wish you knew when you started out? Is there a big aha moment that you're okay, this is how it's going to be from now on?
That I don't actually know anything. I mean, look, if the world has taught us anything in the last 2 years, and the last 2.5 years have been insane. So we don't know anything. People who think they know are completely delusional. So whenever I make an investment, I just try to, not be too confident and understand that I very well could be wrong, and not necessarily in ways that I'm expecting to be wrong. There are just too many unknowns.
Has that ever happened to you where you bought an investment, you thought it was going to be great, and then you just are I have to get out of this because it's just wringing me dry?
Oh yeah. Just in February, as Russia started taking the eastern republics in Ukraine, as the troops started coming in, I thought they wouldn't go further, so I bought a bunch of Russian stocks. I kind of read that situation wrong. So now all my Russian stocks, I still have them. They're frozen. I can't, the West is forbidding me from buying more. The Russians are forbidding me from selling them. So they're just there in limbo.
Okay.
So I've made my fair share of mistakes for sure.
But they're learning experiences, right? Do you take it as a positive?
No.
Well, I don't mean positive in that sense, but I mean positive for future. Frozen, yeah. Well, yeah, no, I just meant a positive learning experience for your future endeavors.
Yeah, it was an expensive one.
Oh, no. Oh, man. Well, at least you can laugh about it. Most people would cry in shame and hide their face, but...
And again, look, I'm diversified. So just as this was happening, I was long energy. I had a lot of uranium, coal, gas, oil, and that went through the roof because of this very situation. So naturally, I was hedged.
Okay.
But
that's the key to diversification. Yeah, but that's the key to diversification. You want to make sure you're well-rounded. So in case something like that does happen, you're not completely in the negative. You still have other, and that's great. And do you have a favorite place that you like to visit? Maybe not invest into, but like to just make sure you keep going back to travel to?
Yes, Montenegro.
Okay.
In the Balkans, beautiful little country of 600,000 people, very affordable. You can go in winter, you can go skiing, and an hour and a half later, you're on the coast, on the Mediterranean, the Adriatic to be more exact, and you're just, having a pint of beer for $2.50 or an espresso for $1, and just relaxing. So I go there a few times a year. I really, really love it. I'm active there in real estate. I have some of my own family that moved there. I love that little country. It's a jewel. I'm so happy whenever I go there, and it's not particularly rich. So there's no surveillance, and you're free. There's a lot of freedom there. It's kind of like back in the 90s, no camera. There aren't cameras everywhere, and there's people aren't trying to control you. You just do your thing and you live, and it's good. I love it.
It's just like not off chart, but kind of off the map and relaxing. And
yeah. And
that sounds great.
And there's some like very nice luxury developments as well, if people are into this. So you can live, the luxury lifestyle, or you can live more laid back like the locals, as you wish. There's a bit of everything for everyone.
Wow. And that's Montenegro. I'll have to put that on my bucket list for my husband and I to get to one day. I love that.
Do it.
Yeah, I think I've seen on your YouTube, you had a YouTube, maybe a couple episodes, and it just looked absolutely gorgeous there. So yeah. Well, this is the question that we have to ask everyone on this show. What is your view of financial freedom, or what does it mean to you specifically?
Cool. So for me, financial freedom is about ultimately personal freedom, right? So I'm not looking to make money to, show off my money, to, buy myself a fat car and this and that and go drink champagne in the clubs. And financial freedom for me is just the means to live the way I want to live without having to deal with, government or other people, trying to put restrictions on me. So ultimately, it's just about freedom, having the freedom to live the way I choose to live in accordance with my beliefs. And that for me is true freedom.
Wow. That's really deep. I like that a lot. It's different for everyone. And I think that's what makes this podcast so unique, is that everyone has a different meaning of that to them. And it's just nice to give people different perspectives. So what is something that you would tell to your clients, or maybe if someone asked you for advice in getting started with international investing? What is something that you would tell them that's either a necessity for them to do to make sure it's safely done, or anything that you can just give them insight into?
Sure. So, sometimes on these shows in the US, you hear about like John that went to Costa Rica and he bought like a house and then it was stolen from him. And at the end of the day, investing overseas is riskier in the sense that not necessarily from a judicial point of view, from a structural point of view, but because you don't know the laws there. You don't know how things work. Often you don't even know what paperwork you need to fill out when you buy something. So my biggest piece of advice is do not be cheap when it comes to hiring lawyers. So if you're going to buy something overseas, make sure you get a good lawyer. Never try to do anything on your own. Always try to get a lawyer that is independent from, the real estate agent you're dealing with. And that's the best way that you can defend your own interests. So how do you go about finding lawyers? I've got a bunch on my website. But the reality is you can often just go onto the US. Actually, the US embassies are quite good for that. Typically, US embassies have lists of local law firms. And then just get in touch with Canada does that as well, France, Germany. Just look at various embassies. Often law firms that are not linked to the US are a bit more affordable. Look at Switzerland, Germany, they have lists.
Okay.
And then you get in touch with these law firms and you just ask them for a quote. It's like, hey, I want to buy, this house or a house worth, this much. I'd like help, from A to Z. How much? And then you'll get a quote. You do that with 2-3 lawyers, you'll get a quote, and then you're good to go. But that's important. Don't be cheap when it comes to lawyers. And then everything will be fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's great information. I really love that you offer so many resources on your website, and it sounds like you just want to help people succeed. And I think that's what's really great about what you do, because it brings you happiness to invest in these overseas markets, and you really just want to see other people have the same kind of happiness as well. Am I right? Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like we're getting to the end here. Is there anything that you want to further say or give any extra information on besides, our website, where to find you and everything like that?
All good.
Okay.
Your questions are great, Ricky.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it. So again, let us know where we can find you on socials, things like that. Love to hear that.
Sure. So the best way to follow me is to go to my website, The Wandering Investor. There's a private list. It's entirely free. You put your email and then you'll get updated on immigration and investment opportunities that I see as I travel around the world. I'm also on YouTube and Instagram, The Wandering Investor. But the main thing is the mailing list.
Okay. Yeah. So join his mailing list for sure. Ladislas Maurice, the Wandering Investor. I just want to say thank you again for being on the podcast today. Really enjoyed this chat. Really insightful, especially if you are looking at investing in overseas and even these markets that he's, looking into emerging and frontier markets. They're all great opportunities to diversify your portfolio. So thanks again, Ladislas Maurice. And I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, CamaPlan, and our producers at Honeycomb Productions. And please, if you're on YouTube, check out the QR code. All the links will be connected in there for Ladislas Maurice. And make sure to join his mailing list because then it'll keep you up to date on everything going on. If you do want to find out more information as well about CamaPlan or self-directed IRAs, please go to CamaPlan.com. You can request a consult with an expert, look at our media log of webinars and past podcasts, or you can open an account today. Thank you so much for listening, and remember to like, follow, and share our podcast, The Road to Financial Freedom, to continue with us on this journey to the path of finding success. Thank you.